All right, hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Travis Barrett. I'm the strength and conditioning coach here at the Sears Schoolhouse at Fairchild AFB. So today I'm just going to cover basically how you can design your own training program and important concepts that you should take note of or be considerate of when you are designing your program. So anyway, I'm just going to cover some of the basics, and hopefully this will give you a better idea of what you should include. So first and foremost, we'll talk about stress. So if the horizontal line is homeostasis, which is essentially where your body likes to live, and the y-axis is the degree of stress, so we've got positive and negative here. Essentially what happens during a training session is we are trying to disrupt homeostasis to some degree, and then training session will end, then you'll go home, rest, recover, hydrate, sleep, eat, all that stuff. And now we should have a new higher level of baseline. So this is what we're after over and over and over again. Now, what will happen if you train too frequently, too hard, too intense, is you will essentially have inadequate recovery, and that will lead to a performance decline. Now, on the complete flip side of that, if you're one of those people who comes in and does the exact same thing over and over and over again without changing anything, the body is not going to be stressed sufficiently enough, and you'll likely end up at a net zero. So that's not a place where we want to be. Ideally, we're stimulating just enough to go home and rest and recover, and then coming back when we're recovered so we can adapt to that new higher level baseline. That is the cornerstone of what we're after, is positive adaptation. So from there, we will get into training residuals. So training residuals just means how long does a specific quality stick around for before you need to train it again. So the two most important ones with the population that I deal with is going to be strength and aerobic development. Okay? These two actually share the same training residual time, which is going to be 30 days plus or minus 5 days. So essentially every 25 to 35 days, I need to stimulate strength and I need to stimulate my aerobic development just to retain what I have. Not necessarily develop it, but just to retain it so I don't lose it. So how that may look within a week, or within a month, would be something like this. So if we lay out our month right here, we could, in theory, train aerobic here, then not train it again until, I don't know, somewhere around this area. Same thing with strength, same thing down here. And the reason it's important for these guys to understand this is because if they get sent on a TDY and they're not able to train in the manner that they want to train, this basically helps them understand so they can not stress out about it. So they know that they're at least going to hang on to the qualities that they've developed before they've TDY'd somewhere. So that's talking about our strength residuals. Next is explaining to these guys essentially points within a week that they can use. So here's what we've got. We've got points, and then recovery time, and then size of the workout. So we got a simple 1 through 5 system here, and it's going to take less than 12. Here we're going to be 12 to 24, 24 to 48, 48 to 72, and then greater than 72. And then from the size standpoint, this will be small, moderate, large, substantial, and extreme. So what's going to happen here is for a 1-pointer, we're going to look at that being restoration. For a 2-pointer, that's going to be retention of a specific quality. And then 3, 4, and 5 is going to be to what degree do we want to develop a specific quality. Okay. So how this works is within a week, what I've found for a lot of these guys is somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 points. So if they've got 15 to 20 points that they can roughly use within a week, and they say they don't feel so hot. They come in on Monday and they're coming off of a sickness or whatever, and they've had a stressful weekend, they didn't sleep, whatever. Okay, let's take one of those points and just go through a restoration session. Okay, so they might go, if we go second level here, if we go a 1-point restoration, whole body restoration, so maybe they do something like just an easy cycle for 10 to 20 minutes, and then they get into some Normatex, Theragun, something along those lines. That would be 1 out of a possible 15 to 20, and that number can be pretty flexible depending on how they're feeling within the day, within the week, things like that. So then they come back Tuesday, they're ready to go, feeling pretty good, and they do, for example, an upper body session, and they have a pretty good sized workout. So, and they're also getting after it in terms of intensity. It's going to take somewhere in the neighborhood of 48 to 72 hours to fully recover from an upper body standpoint. So now we've used up 5 of those 15. Okay, so it's going to be 48 to 72 hours before we train upper body again. So we might not even consider upper body until Friday, as an example. So in the meantime, we come back Wednesday, maybe again feeling really good. We hit another 4, but this time we do a lower body session. So now we're at 9 points. Okay, I'm beat to hell. I really don't want to do much on Thursday. I have a 1. You get the idea. You start to build this up and just count your points through the week. The issue is the type of people that this career field attracts is going to be guys who are very, very driven, that constantly want to push the limit, that constantly want to redline. And that is good, but it also is a double-edged sword. It can be bad at times too, because if you never allow the body to rest and recover, then our susceptibility to injury is much higher. So those are the first couple of things that I touch on with these guys. So next we'll get into basically movement patterns, RPE, and readiness. So for the movement patterns, we just look at mastering the basics. We don't look at doing anything fancy or highly complex. We're trying to get very, very, very good at the basic movement patterns. Now, in terms of which movement patterns we do, or excuse me, in terms of which exercises we do, is going to be dependent on the individual. And that's going to depend on their training age, their injury history, their anthropometrics, all of that stuff. So the movement patterns I look at, we need to squat, deadlift, push, pull, do that horizontally, and do that vertically. We'll do some carrying variations, and then we'll do some conditioning as needed. So throughout the week, what I'll explain to these guys is, we want to do a bilateral squat 1 time per week at least, a unilateral squat 1 time per week. So as an example, maybe with a bilateral squat, it's a front squat. And maybe with a unilateral squat, it's something like a Bulgarian split squat. Now with the deadlift variation, we might go bilateral. It might be an RDL. And for a uni, we might be with, a single leg dumbbell RDL. Just as an example. So obviously, with our bilateral movements, it's going to be much more intense because we're handling more load. We are going to cover a greater distance, whereas unilateral work, we can still get in some good work and some corrective without going as heavy. So then we break this down and we can say, okay, we got a horizontal pull and we have a vertical pull. Then we've got a vertical press. And then as far as horizontal press, I'll just leave that out for the most part, not because it's bad or anything like that, just due to the fact that these guys are doing tons of push-ups on their own anyway. So we'll primarily focus on horizontal pulling, and vertical pressing, and we'll do this multiple times per week. And we can break this down into bilateral and unilateral as well. So as an example, horizontal pull could be something like a seal row, and then maybe on another day we come in and we do a dumbbell row. And these can be done multiple times per week. Vertical pull, again, these guys are doing tons of chin-ups, so let's start doing weighted chin-ups. So we might do weighted chins, lat pull-downs, and these can be broken down into bilateral and unilateral as well. Now vertical press, we'll do overhead press, Z press, things of that nature. And then carries, we'll get into things like single arm waiter walks, double arm waiter walks, front rack carries, suitcase carries, farmer's carries, all of them. We'll generally do that as either a whole workout in and of itself, or just as a light warm up. And then conditioning, we'll break conditioning down into essentially non-impact, and then we'll break it the other side down into impact. Now, the reason this matters is these guys will go out on rough marches, and their joints, specifically their knees, low back, and hips, will be torn up quite a bit. So we need to be mindful of how much impact work they're doing. So with the non-impact, we can further break that down into things like maybe an airdyne or a Versa climber, something like that. We can also go with a rower. The big thing to remember here is that there is no magic exercise that you must do or no magic tool that you must do. It's all what's most appropriate for your body based on injury history, training history, things like that. So impact, when appropriate, we might get into things like sprinting. Not really big on jogging, but these guys will have to do runs occasionally, so we'll do just enough to retain our ability there. So occasionally we'll go out on light runs with these guys, but by and large most of it's going to be short, intense sprinting. So those are kind of the main movements we look at here. Now, rather than we look at movements instead of single joint exercises. So we only have so much volume or so much in the tank that we can utilize each day. So we're going to get a higher return on our time doing something like a deadlift and a weighted chin up, as opposed to, dumbbell bicep curl and a tricep extension. Again, not because those are bad, they definitely have their place, but if I've only got so much time with these guys, I'm going to pick the exercises that are going to give me a very high return. So now, based off the points and the movements, how do we talk about how heavy do we go on sets and reps? So, very simple system here, it's just RPE. So RPE is rate of perceived exertion, and this is going to go off of a 1 to 10 scale. A 1 would be you're basically just laying on the couch not doing anything, and a 10 is all out max effort. For 1, you maybe, hopefully you make it on that rep. That's a true 10. So most of the time we are going to train in the range of 6 to 8 RPE. Occasionally we'll touch on the 9. Very rarely will we visit the 10. Again, not because the 10 is bad, but just when these guys are in course, that's highly stressful for them. When they've got TDYs going on, they're more stressed, and that stress matters. Whether it's mental, physical, or emotional, stress is stress. So if they're already stressed at a high level, and then we come into the gym to max out, what's their likelihood of being focused on that task? What's their likelihood or risk-reward ratio there with injury or non-injury? So the majority of our work will be in the 6 to 10 range. So I like to utilize the RPE, and essentially what's going to happen is some days they're going to come in and feel great. Other days they're going to come in and feel like shit. Other days are going to come in and feel great. Other days are just going to be and then they may feel great. So this is just called autoregulation. This works out very, very well in the long run as long as you're honest about where you feel like you are. So on days where you have a lot of shit going on, no big deal. Dial it back a little bit, and I'll show you what we've been doing in terms of assessing readiness, of how we dial it back. So it's very simple. So there's a handful of ways you can kind of field test readiness or assess readiness. So number one, we can go off of heart rate. So I encourage guys to keep a journal, measure their heart rate upon waking. So if they have a heart rate upon waking of 50 beats a minute, if they know that's their average, if they suddenly wake up one morning and their heart rate has jumped up to 75, we know something is going on within the system. So it is not going to be in our best interest to say, fuck it, ignore that, let's just push through it anyway. That doesn't make sense. So on the flip side, if they wake up one day and their resting heart rate's dropped a little bit, that's a good thing. We can probably get after it a little bit more today. So that's one quick and dirty way we can do that. And again, it becomes increasingly accurate over time with the more data that you record. So that's heart rate. Number two, you can download an app on your phone. It's just a tap test. And you can, it's again a quick and dirty way to assess nervous system preparedness, which is going to give us some good insight into how prepped and ready are you to either lift fast or lift heavy. So that's one where you do a 10-second trial, 3 trials every day. Each day you use it, again, more data comes in, it becomes increasingly accurate. For the guys who are here on base with me that I see routinely, what we'll do is we'll assess vertical jump. So we'll take their vertical jump and we'll do this daily when they come in. So they've got 3 sets of 1 max effort vertical jump after they've got warmed up and gone through all their stuff. So here's what we've got. We've got a simple stoplight system, green, yellow, and red. So essentially if they hit green, that means that they've hit a personal record or a PR. So that means we're probably going to adjust the sets and the reps and get after it a little bit more in terms of intensity, because for whatever reason their system's feeling primed and ready to go. Now for a yellow, if they have somewhere in the range of a 5 to a 10% drop off of their normal vertical jump, typically what we'll do here is we'll drop a set, we'll drop maybe 1 set, maybe 2, and we'll add a rep or 2. So we'll drop 1 to 2 sets and add 1 to 2 reps. So what this does is it allows us to dial back the intensity. They may do a few more reps per set, but this allows them to get their technique tighter, which is good. So basically the red will represent a greater than a 10% drop off. So in this situation we might drop 2 to 3 sets and we might add 2 to 3 reps. And what we do here is just kind of situation dependent and kind of what I see from the individual. So again, this allows for more regulation of volume and intensity and more technique practice, because we still do want to get some work in. Technique can always be better. So that's just quick little insight into some things that I cover with these guys so that they're educated, so that they can make good decisions on their own, because they may be going to places where there's not an HPO staff, there's not a strength and conditioning coach available. So if they understand these basic principles and concepts, then they can get into things that they can make decisions on intelligently. So do you have any questions on any of this? Did it make sense?
Yeah, it all made sense. I'm kind of interested in what that app is for the test though.
Oh, for the tap test?
Yeah, tap
so
test.
Just go to the app store and just type in tap test and you can download stuff. Yeah, anything else you want me to cover in here, or do you have questions on anything?
I don't think so.
Cool. All right. Thanks for watching.